Welcome this evening. How are you guys? If you're just getting on board.
So here's why the Republicans are going to lose.
Welcome this evening. How are you guys? If you're just getting on board. Okay, obviously. This evening, how are you guys? If you're just getting on board. Okay, obvious. All right, that's muted on that. Hey, how's it going? I'm your happy healer lover, Keith Landi. Welcome to the program for the first time in a while. And a lot's happened in my life. And a lot's been going on with this election. And there's just a lot to cover. I watched the debate myself this evening, and I really wasn't as disappointed as I was in the last one. I felt like at least there was a little bit more civility there. And bear with me through the program, actually. This is going to be the first one back. And it's not really scheduled. Tomorrow is really the first one back. This is just to get me a little bit used to these controls, make sure they're working okay and everything for tomorrow. But I was really, I have a very different view in my campaign, in our campaign of the Happy Healer, for what we plan to do if we had the great privilege of getting the confidence of the American people. And I'm confident in that plan. I know that that plan's the right way to go. In fact, I'm so confident of that should we go any other way, I know that we will fail to make do, that we will not be able to get through the next 100 years, and that's being realistic. We have to make it to a type 1 civilization scientifically, and I get into a lot of this stuff. And this is the kind of stuff I'm going to be approaching moving forward. This election is winding down. I have myself been a bit disassociated with things because I've had a lot happen as well. If you don't know, I actually had my Happy Force 1 burn up. It was a horrible thing. It was sudden on one Sunday morning, and it just burned up. So there's a lot to cover, and I'm going to get into all of that stuff tomorrow. Now's not really the time. In fact, what you see in the background here is actually the desktop, because what we're going to do is put on the debate here from this evening, and we're going to go over some of that stuff. So you can see it here. I just want to make sure. Okay, there you go. And yeah, there it is. And that, we'll see if it plays perfectly or not, and we'll see how this goes. I'm just checking on the different parameters of the, of the program. So let's go ahead and hit play on this. I want to just randomly.
16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators. We're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. You hear nothing else I say tonight. Hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day.
I'm going to
And
respond.
there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a.
Okay, so I'm just going to say right off the bat that President Trump, the way he responds to the COVID situation doesn't help his case at all, which for people that are really eager to keep the stock market strong, keep the economy going strong, and that are concerned about where the country is headed in the next year, especially me, because I'm looking at this thing completely differently. For the sake of just making sense to you, I'm going to play the game and I'm going to explain this thing the way you're going to want to hear. But at the same point, it's only because we're choosing out of two men that I think are completely inferior for the job, specifically because they are not lovers. I am a lover. I am a proud lover. I am your happy healer lover, and I'll never stand away from that. In fact, when I'm in that mode, when I feel those energies, is when I am feeling at my very best. It's when I feel most confident. So, but when I step out of that, it's like, it's milky, it's ugly, it's greed. It's greed hell. It's this world, this notion, this idea that there's not enough for the both of us. Sorry, so we're going to have to do greed because there's only enough for one of us, and we'll have to determine who's going to get this, and there's going to be a loser. And so, you know, it's the old adage, one loaf of bread and you have two hobos, and they're going to argue over it until, of course, even kill each other over it in the world of greed hell. And so it's that very notion that scarcity is a foregone conclusion that I disagree with. I think that, of course, scarcity is what greed is after. That's exactly what you would get when you do things with greed. So just know that right off the bat, if you don't know me at all, before we get into any of this stuff, because if I just start talking, and especially on a level like these analysts are talking, I'm going to be completely out of my shell, because I am your happy healer lover, and I am so fired up about what we could do for this country. The sad thing, though, is, and it's a real sad thing for me to come to terms with, because I've worked so hard for this not to happen. I sold my home, and I bought a bus, and I transformed that bus, and it was Happy Force One. It was supposed to crisscross this nation, and we were going to make a difference. But of course, you don't have a control over everything, is what that story ultimately is. And so things change sometimes. And what changed for me was that when Happy Force One burned up, I lost my ability to do anything. We had COVID and I was homeless. I was actually staying with my pastor, the same place where I'm at right now, where I actually got somewhat back up on my own feet, working hard. I'm just a giver and I'm a lover. And I know exactly what I'm meant to be doing. And I feel this is what we are all meant to be doing. And just like I said from the get-go, right out of the gate, I said that the most important thing of all is being unified in love, and getting away from this greed and realizing that this is never going to take us to the promised land. So if we don't change the continuity of humanity itself, and I said in the next 100 years, I mean, there's a lot of people who would argue that. They would say in 10 years or 5 years, or even in some cases 20 years. And you know what? The reality of it is those numbers are more likely. I'm just telling you that, you know, this is science, and these numbers and math, this is not like maybe or so. If we don't make these changes, the numbers show us and tell us, and they speak in quite certain terms, that then our destiny becomes death. If it's not in 15 years, well, then it's in 25 years. And the thing about it is that if we don't change our ways, if we don't get out of greed, if we don't leave greed in the past, then we are for sure heading towards a world of death. Scientists have said it. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's a very world-renowned physicist. You have Mickey Okako. He talks about the type 1, type 2, type 3 civilization. These guys that are running, they have no brains. They have no reason for being there. They're not talking about the life-saving sustenance and the continuity of humanity type policies we need in these times in order to save our butts. And quite frankly, they're not doing that. So know that right off the bat. Having said that, I'm scared. If I'm scared of anything, I'm scared of seeing people with lack of courage. And they get caught up in their own world. They just say, let me tone everything out. And I know things are not good enough for them. So they can't afford to tone things out. We have to be so progressive. We have to be so 100% into what we're doing to bring together a nation, to get unified, and to realize what freedom really looks like. What we're doing right now is not freedom when you have Americans dying on the streets, the lovers. And I always said, too, I've been simulcasting for a long time. And I said back in my home, I said, I know where I'm going to end up. I'm going to end up on the streets. And so look at us. You know what? I don't even care. The fact of the matter is I hold my head up high because I know that I'm serving humanity, and I serve love, and I serve a higher purpose, a value, and its reason for living. These are the things where real human value is actually calculated, not the way we do it now in greed. And then greed gets us focused on money and resentful with people, and it's a dead-end game. It's a zero-sum game for humanity. It's foolish to do it because we all end up losers. It's recognizing, almost accepting the fact that scarcity is the only solution, and so that we must do greed, that we can't figure out a way that we can do God's love and abundance in the United States of America, where we can grow the economy into levels it's never been before. I mean, my goodness, you wouldn't believe the cavity that is existing in the world of energies that's ready to swallow up and just explode. And just I talk about in the historical context. You look, we've had a dark energy where, we've fallen behind. We've had an age of enlightenment where we've propelled forward. These were always times at a cusp where we were, discovering new technologies and figuring out new ways, and then finally hit to like a fork in the road, and at that fork we had to make a decision. And now I get back to where I say my fear courage. And if they had the courage, they could change in the moment, because the technology has gone above, and that has required of them a new way of thinking, and that they can meet that challenge, and that they can survive. But in the dark ages, they failed to meet that challenge, and things went backwards. And that they had barbarians, and we know all about the fall of Rome. And then, of course, we have the Age of Enlightenment and a great age of discovery when science was respected. And we have scientists like Max, and also, I'm sorry, I don't want to get into too much of this physics stuff, but the fact is, we have so many different scientists that have taken us from the last 100 years to now. And all of the accomplishment that we've achieved at this point, that if we don't make the leap, just like we failed to make in the dark ages, this time we're going to have a dark ages that we are not ready to cash that check. This is not something that we intended for. In fact, the situation we're in now is not something we intended for, just to be clear. This is all manipulation. It's greed. Greed is a force and energy. Just like I say, there's this big void that as soon as you step up and fill it, there's going to be this massive pouring out of opportunities. And these opportunities are amazing when you see it clearly for what it is. And I talk about this stuff on the website, and there's hundreds of articles. And what I'm going to be doing is writing a book in the next 6 months, and I'll be putting it out. It's going to be about the campaign that we just ran. And of course, it's also going to be why I am endorsing Donald Trump for this election now, just like we did the last time. And it goes back to the fear of courage. I know the energies that exist, and they're pouring out, and we have to set ourselves up for the continuity of humanity itself in a way that's going to allow us to make this great change. And it's competent people for a long time who have come together and have realized that we need to, and have all said it's impossible because we can't come together. That's what they think. And in the world of greed hell, I agree, we can't. The notion is that we're at war with each other for resources. How could we ever get along to do anything? And so it's time to look at this thing from a different perspective altogether, and just to realize that if the election, the idea of the election was to have just Donald Trump gone, peaceful moments, oh, well, the news isn't all the time talking about Donald Trump, basically. But outside of that, your life is generally the same. The big changes we need to happen aren't happening. None of the previous presidents have been doing what we're talking about in this campaign of doing. The way I explain it is that they're all running for president in the world of greed hell, that they accept greed hell. I mean, to me, it's unconscionable. How can you accept greed hell? It's killing us. I mean, we can't afford to accept it. But at the same token, greed hell is scarcity. The world of God's love, as I call it, you don't have to call it God's love. God's love is clear. It's two things. It's truth, the unbiased truth, not the one that you've repeated many times, but one that you could say, for example, put the scientific standard against. And love, compassion for people, and care. It's so important. That's it. That's God's love. And if you can get that right, it's a guiding force, and it can actually guide us to a different way of doing things. And that's the world that I see when I say when I'm running for president that I want to go to and that I want to take us to, and what's possible in that world. And what's possible in that world is so much greater than what's possible in the world of greed hell. People, in fact, actually are at their wits' end in the world of greed hell. They know it. And when I speak of this plan that I've thought about for so long, and I've meditated on, and I've studied on, and I thought about the answers on, and I was quiet long enough to understand the right things, to then come back and speak clearly so it could be understood and it could be appreciated. And now to step up and say that all of that progress can be lost because we go back to a keel, an idea, a belief that, well, now we're okay again. Now there's no imminent need for change. Now we can all relax. And the courage meter drops, and we can't make the progress that will save our lives should we fall into such a situation. It's the greatest fear. It's the greatest threat. It's the greatest likely situation that can happen if Biden wins, in my view. I've been saying this for well over a year. I predict things spot on almost every time. You can go back and check the website. I'm not always best with my language, and I'm learning. I'm not a politician, but I'll tell you one thing. I do get better, and I do understand, and I do listen, and I do change. That's because I'm a humble human being, and I'm a lover. And so I have no problem getting this stuff right. When these other guys, they're just so locked in their one way of thinking. And I know that we as Americans, we are beyond this particular never-ending, non-stop hell. People are changing to their soul. They're, for the first time, and I'm a 42-year-old man, that we see homegrown American terrorism and the kind of depression. Now we're dealing with COVID and the coronavirus. They were just talking about it. For one thing, I don't like to see it politicized. But aside from that, because really people are dying. And to be honest, if you go back to when this first happened, nobody really had answers. Everybody was just very scared. And in fact, if you go back to the channel, go back to the website, and if you go to the blogs, and if you go to the channel, because not everything is on the website, and you look, you'll see a lot of the programs that were put out during that time talked about that truth and talked about some of the things we can expect and about wearing masks. And I had it all spot on right then. It was immediate. In fact, I couldn't understand why they were saying not to wear masks. Of course, in greed hell, this is how they deal with things. They don't trust you based on love. Instead, they assume that you're going to do wrong, and so they connive and manipulate you. They say, oh no, masks aren't going to help you, but really it's just so that the health workers can have them. They couldn't just say to you, America, save those masks for our health workers on the front lines. Because if they're without them, they're going to be dying, and then we're not going to have our health workers. Instead, they had to take the liar's way out and say that they just didn't do any good. They figured that for sure would get you to not buy them. And that created a lot of confusion. That was a sin that reverberates till this day. See how greed hell causes so many problems, and it never has the solution for them either. In fact, greed itself comes out of the human being, and people start giving solutions, then that greed also breaks those solutions. It's just, there's nothing pure about acceptance of the world of greed hell. It just makes horrible human beings. I mean, you have your children, you hope that they grow up to meet beautiful people that are lovers, like your happy healer lover. And it's just hard to find people like that because we're just so on this greed train that people are geared almost to think that, yes, we live in a world of scarcity, and that if we don't have warfare among ourselves, war with self, for a loaf of bread, then we are all going to die, when that's what's killing us. Okay? Unbelievable.
Matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very
Can
quickly.
you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well, and we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get.
I kind of went on as long as I want to go on about the coronavirus right now. It's a very sad thing. A lot of people are dying. Like I said, I put some stuff out back when it first came out. A lot of this stuff I put then stayed true, still remain true now. I felt like there's going to be a lot more deaths than what everybody was saying. I still do think that if you look at the number of people that have been infected compared to the number of people that have passed away, there's just a little bit over 8 million or 10 million people that have been infected. And that if you look at the death rate of a little over 200,000 people, that equates to about, when you then factor that back in for 330 million people, the equation is roughly over 2 million people dead. And so that's why we've got to have this is all a result of us doing greed instead of progress, because the world of love is a progressive world. We're not wasting our time, our young people, going into world of finance. All these people that are so smart running into finance, they should be running into science, and we should be finding new ways to discover new opportunities to just break the barrier. We're at the heart of it, a species that is out for a journey, and we are lacking our journey, we're lacking our purpose, and we're lacking our way. That's what's important, and that's why we're so off keel. We don't have freedom. We talk about it all the time. You can't have freedom unless you're in a world of love. You're at war with yourself, and you don't have to be. It's in vain. We have technology. This is all out of God's world, in my view. That's my faith. But I'll tell you what, we have technology, and we can count on that technology, and we can work harder to bring in new technology. And there's so much there that's possible. I know it's possible. I study science, and I understand it quite well. I do electrical. The reason why I'm here now in Mini Force One, by the way, welcome to Mini Force One, is because I understand science and because I take the time to understand things well. I don't just go in things brash and not with consideration and care, like everything should have. And in the world of love, that's how everything is. And the power of love is the feedback force loop. I can choose to love you, and that love is always a choice. It's a valiant choice. And that when you choose to love somebody, that the feedback is almost automatic, because now this person, especially when you're of high faith and they know that it's real love, it's like they know how much love that you have for them, and they relate with that love because it's the same love that they have for themselves. At the heart of it, we all have to love ourselves in order to be good to anyone else. And that part of them that relates with the self that they love of themselves knows that it has that in common with you, that same love. And it works because they know that that love is almost like a part of them living in you. And so love has an immediate feedback force loop that you can choose to love somebody, and they receive that kindness and with almost no effort love you back. And so that's the power of love. Love is a very powerful force, and it only becomes more and more powerful. It's at different levels. It's not like you only have one version of love, you know. Love has complicated answers for complicated problems and simple answers for simple problems. You know, there's an old saying, you never make a problem more complicated than it needs to be, because that wouldn't make sense. You want to simplify it, and so that you make it as simple as you can so that you can efficiently and effectively take care of that problem. But the cardinal rule in doing that, especially if you're playing with such tight margins in life, is that if you're going to do something where you're simplifying it to its bare parts in order to keep things simple, you never make it more simple than it actually is. And that's how love is. It never crosses that barrier. And what greed does, it constantly makes things simpler. People don't matter. Your story doesn't matter. Move on quick. Quick flashes. You can hardly get heard. All this study and meditation and wisdom and understanding that I put into life, there's children that could benefit from that information. There's adults that could walk back from the bridge, as I call it, because I've had so many do it. Step back from the bridge, because whereas before they lacked the heart and were depressed and didn't find a reason for living, after understanding and having been enlightened, they could see the light and feel that love and feel lifted again. And that's the power of love. So if you want to talk about what the powerful force is in this universe, and as so far as it's concerned to the human species, it's love. And that's clear. That's a clear thing. And I love to study science, and I look at this entire thing scientifically. I look at the entire story, everything, from theology all the way down to society and humanity, and just the whole 9 yards in philosophy and science, the understandings that we currently have, and where that brings us in terms of theories about what life is, what life can be, and better living practices that keeps you safe, ways to achieve any goal that you're out to achieve, because you're confident and empowered and always smart, because love keeps you smart. It keeps you balanced. You're not focused on the lies and all the things that what greed hell does. So you're just clear-minded, and that is what the world of love brings. People are so much more invigorated, driven, and passionate. I say these are the kinds of people that you want to be dating. These are the kinds of people you want your children to be dating. And it's up to us. The new future human work is to actually raise the specter in the human species, and the spirit, the love, and the oneness, really. And because in unity, we can get things done. And when you find the right energy that binds people together, that is what they want, that's taking care of them, that brings two ideologies together, then you have a very sound chance of having a unity that's almost like defying fate. Fate had us going off the rails, and love pulled us back in. That's the kind of energy that I'm talking about. And yeah, none of these candidates are offering that.
Vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing.
So we're going to jump ahead here.
To live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he's never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry, the warm weather. Don't worry, maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did. You certainly did.
I talked about his xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handle.
You thought I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
that's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap at his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the name, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely.
I'm just going to pause it right there for a moment. If you go back and, like I said earlier, you can look at some of the different things that I said when it was first happening and how I responded to it. And in fact, some of the different ideas that I had around how we could all respond to it. Definitely empowerment stuff and mind over matter kind of stuff. It's like we're already in this deep. If happy healing virtues were in power already, we would have been able to be so far along in technological development. That's a huge part of Happy Healer, the pillars and virtues of the campaign, and that it's a must if we are to survive as a human species, and that is pretty much a scientific fact. So at what point do you acknowledge these facts? And I actually made a comparison in how people almost spiritually can know the right thing to do, but to not do it. They can see all the math and everything can add up properly. It can be so clear that that's the right thing to do, but somehow they still lose faith that, I don't know, maybe something will change. I'm not fully sold on the idea. You know, I'm going to be a holdout. I'm just something about change. They're so absolutely, it's like spiritually resistant to change. And that is unnatural for the human spirit. So we're also fighting against it and looking for the courage to make change. And again, these are attributes of greed hell. In the world of love, you shed these kinds of things because you are already committed to building up the human spirit. Like I said, they don't even address this in the world of greed hell. In the world of greed hell, it's not possible. In the world of love, though, we have systems and institutions and programs and ways and means for dealing with improving the human being and dealing with racism and dealing with bigotry and actually making people better. And the way that they're doing things now by constantly putting a big magnifying glass on it, not realizing that ultimately we're the spirit within and that we need to build a strong unified spirit, that strong unified spirit can do so many more powerful things that can serve back to its many individual parts, and it lifts the entire ocean. You say the ocean, when you lift it, it raises all tides, and that's what love does. And greed is just constantly in a mission of lies, demands, trickery, rushing the pot. Always, whenever something happens, it's always fake. That's just greed. It's just the nature of greed. In fact, in the world of greed hell, the very notion that you can have a world of love is funny. It's like these mocking devils are everywhere. And I say be very, very cautious of that, because you can fall into that thinking, and that's not how you were programmed. That's not how it works. Maybe you don't have the many different life circumstances that have brought you to the wisdom and the conclusion that that's not how life works yet, but it's not. Take it from your happy healer lover. I love you, and I get you, and I know you, and the fact is, you would agree if you've seen some of the hell, if you haven't been there yet. Avoid that hell. Take it from those of us who have. And from those of us who have, we know and we respect. And we have a humble, honest approach towards this. We get it. And I'll tell you what, the more that we can share and have and see this spiritual awakening that's happening around the world, that's a good thing. Because out of that comes love. And never forget, the powers and virtues of our almighty creator, God, is love and truth. And so an unbiased truth, and you have to be so humble to give out that unbiased truth. It's kind of hard, actually, for a lot of people to be unbiased. And that's going to have to be something that we work on, where we prophesize to death that we all talk about, and we make it come true. And that's not something that was a foregone conclusion. Just like greed's idea that somehow scarcity is a foregone conclusion, that we as a smart sentinel species, with all of the gifts of technology that we have received and the insight to already in advance know that things are going to get so much better just with time, they always do, that somehow we believe that we can't overcome scarcity. Yeah, we're tuning up for a new dark ages. We're in complete denial. In fact, the technology has moved past the human mind. We've become so greed-filled that we're unable to open ourselves to continue to learn and to change. In the world of love, we always are learners. In fact, you know it to your soul and your heart. You always want to learn. And so people never stop desiring to learn, in my view. And these are the things that are going to save our lives, quite frankly.
For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools.
Well,
President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but it's fantastic. He said the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama,
Crimea.
they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them. But you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of this was happening. And
In China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money.
You know what, though? I've talked about this in the past when it comes to these indiscretions, and on each side, everybody's going insane about the other side's indiscretions. First off, these indiscretions are bred from greed, hell, and it's just a common thing. You see it all the time. It becomes sickening. It's something that we can do so much better. And that's partly why I believe that if we're ever to have something more special in this lifetime, and that we take our lives seriously, that we're not just skating along, that we want to make progress, and that we're serious about that progress, and we want to save our lives, we want our children's lives to be saved, that we're going to do smart things so that we can avert the death that's fast approaching otherwise, based on how grown men are acting with such ill-fated greed. And we can just acknowledge, in fact, scientifically, we already talk about it. It's completely something just totally understood, known. It's many people doubt whether we'll ever make it to a type 1 civilization. You hear Elon Musk talk about it. He's all the time doubting the future, trying to do things that will save the future. I get Elon Musk very well, although I feel like one thing he's kept is integrity. For the purpose he's serving, he's always kept that clear. You'll always hear him talk about it's about bringing the advent of the electric vehicles to market. That was most important, so that it makes an order of magnitude change in the world. And to that extent, I say home run. We need more people like that. But at the same point, he's very much actually for Donald Trump, in my view. And the reason for that is he's become, he likes the way things are working out for him right now. And, you know, he doesn't want that to change. And, you know, he doesn't believe in the way people, I've heard this, the way he's discussed that, but I've also heard, I'm thinking back to previous interviews and also the fact that I believe he either backed or said good things about, what was that gentleman who ran? He was going to give the $1,000 income for everybody. I'm sure you guys remember who that was. And so I admire if that's the case, because I actually agreed a lot with those kinds of ideas. Andrew Yang. And so, anyway, we're going to talk tomorrow about some very important future expectations of the campaign and of what's happening in our world right now and what has already happened. I'm going to have a video that I put together that I'll be playing tomorrow as well. And so tune in. It's at 4 p.m. I don't know how long it'll go for, maybe an hour or so. And just, I want to end this campaign the right way. I put so much effort into it. I care incessantly. I love Americans, and I love America, and I'm a lover. And knowing all the hard work and ingenuity and effort that went into the ideas that were principally built from happy healer virtues, this is very close to my heart, and that's why I'm sticking with it. And we're going to talk a lot about that stuff tomorrow. I'm going to give you a chance. I'll have a lot more back and forth with you guys, because I wasn't so much on the chat tonight. I'm still just getting the hang of this. I seen where the chat was now finally. And if you do want to chat, go on YouTube and catch me there. And you can figure out where that is just by going to YouTube and typing in Happy Healer for President. And also the link, you're maybe on YouTube. Either way, I'll be on all the areas where I'm on now. So, okay, guys, good night. God bless you. God bless America. And definitely things aren't over. Laid back, perhaps. We have a lot of plans. And it's about love.